I convinced myself it was just exhaustion. That's what everyone says at first. I had been working double shifts all week, coming home after midnight, collapsing into bed with my clothes still
On.
The apartment was quiet in the way only old buildings get, not peaceful, but watchful. Pipes clicked inside the walls, and the floorboards whispered when the temperature changed. I had learned to ignore those sounds. This one, though, didn't fit. At exactly 2:11 a.m., I heard my front door unlock. Not open. Unlock. I lay still, eyes wide, listening to the soft metallic click echo through the hallway. I hadn't moved. I hadn't touched my keys. I lived alone. My phone was on the nightstand, glowing faintly with the time, mocking me with its certainty. I waited for the door to open. It didn't. Minutes passed. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure anyone in the apartment could hear it. Finally, I forced myself to get up. Every step toward the hallway felt like stepping into deeper water. The door was closed.
Locked.
Deadbolt still in place. Nothing out of order. I slept with the lights on that night. The next night, it happened again.
Same time.
Same sound. This time, after the click, I heard breathing. Slow.
Calm.
Right outside my bedroom door. I didn't open it. I didn't scream. I just lay there, staring at the handle, waiting for it to turn. It never did. By the fifth night, I wasn't sleeping at all. On a road that wasn't supposed to exist. I was driving home from a friend's place late, GPS guiding me through unfamiliar backroads to avoid traffic. Rain streaked across my windshield, blurring the world into dark shapes and reflections. When the GPS told me to turn left, I hesitated. The road ahead was narrow, unmarked, swallowed by trees. I turned anyway. The moment my tires crossed onto the road, my phone lost signal. The GPS froze. The radio cut to static. Even the rain seemed quieter, as if the forest was absorbing sound. I drove for what felt like miles, but the road never changed. No houses. No streetlights. Just endless trees. And the beam of my headlights. Then I saw someone standing in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes. The figure didn't move. It was a woman, facing away from me, long hair hanging down her back, wearing a light-colored dress soaked dark by rain. I rolled down my window, just enough to shout, "Are you okay?" She turned slowly. Her face was wrong. Not injured. Not distorted. Just empty. Like it hadn't been finished. No expression. No emotion. Her mouth opened, and when she spoke, her voice came from inside my car. "Don't stop here."
My doors locked themselves.
The headlights flickered, and when they steadied, the road was empty again. I reversed until the tires hit pavement, heart pounding, hands shaking so badly I could barely steer. The GPS came back to life like nothing had happened. I searched for that road later. It doesn't appear on any map. The third story is about a child who wouldn't stay asleep. My sister asked me to babysit my nephew for the weekend while she was out of town. He was 5 years old, quiet, polite, and terrified of his bedroom. The first night, I tucked him in and read him a story until his eyes closed. I turned off the light and shut the door. 10 minutes later, he was standing in the hallway. "There's someone in my room," he whispered. I checked. Closet empty. Under the bed empty. Windows locked. I told him it was just shadows.
He didn't argue.
He just nodded and went back to bed. At 1:34 a.m., I woke to him shaking me. "He's closer now." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I asked him who he meant. "The man who stands in the corner," he said. "He doesn't like when I sleep." I slept on the floor of his room that night, back against the door, staring into the darkness. I saw nothing, heard nothing, but I felt watched. In the morning, my sister called to check in. I told her what he said, laughing it off. She didn't laugh. She went quiet, then said, "He used to say that before we moved." Moved from a house where a previous tenant had died in the child's bedroom. That night, my nephew slept soundly. I didn't. I installed it after a string of break-ins in my neighborhood. It faced my backyard, covering the gate and the sliding door. The first few nights were uneventful. Motion alerts triggered by cats, branches, nothing unusual. On the fourth night, the alert woke me at 3:03 a.m. Motion detected. I opened the app. The feed showed my backyard, still and silent. Then I noticed something in the corner of the frame. A shape that hadn't been there before.
Tall.
Too tall. Standing just beyond the reach of the camera's night vision. It stepped forward. The camera glitched, pixels tearing across the screen. When the image stabilized, the figure was closer. Close enough that I could see it wasn't facing the house. It was facing the camera. Watching me watch it. I dropped my phone. When I picked it up again, the feed was normal. Empty yard. No alerts. The next morning, I found footprints in the dirt by the gate. Bare feet. Large.
Deep.
Leading nowhere. After the blackout night, I stopped trusting quiet. Silence used to mean safety. Now it felt like something holding its breath. The apartment seemed to listen when I moved, as if every step I took was being counted. I started leaving the television on at night, low volume, just to prove that sound still existed. Even then, I would catch moments when the audio dipped for half a second, like something passed between me and the
speakers.
The front door clicked again, 3 nights later. This time I was awake. I watched the handle very slowly rotate downward, just a few millimeters, before stopping. The chain rattled softly, not from force, but from being touched. Tested. I pressed my back against the wall, phone shaking in my hand, thumb hovering over the emergency call screen. Nothing came through the door. Instead, something moved inside the walls. Not the usual pipe sounds. This was softer. A dragging sound, like fabric against drywall, moving from the hallway toward my bedroom. I locked myself in the bathroom and stayed there until sunrise, knees to my chest, listening to the sound circle the room, over and over, until it faded like it had never existed. When I checked the apartment in daylight, there was nothing out of place, except for the bedroom mirror. It was fogged. From the inside. I stayed awake the entire next night, sitting on the edge of my bed with my feet flat on the floor, afraid that if I lay down I would wake up somewhere else. The room felt slightly tilted, like a photograph hung crooked on a wall. Every object seemed a little out of place, even though nothing had moved. The air itself felt
watched.
I kept checking the time, noticing how the minutes stretched longer than they should. When the clock finally reached 2:11 a.m., my stomach tightened so hard it felt like my body already knew what was coming. Nothing happened. That terrified me more than the sound ever had. I waited for the click. I waited for the breathing. Instead, there was only a pressure in my ears, like being underwater. Then I realized the television was still on, but the volume was at 0. I hadn't muted it. I was sure of that. I reached for the remote and turned the sound up. For a split second, I heard my own voice coming from the speakers. Not speaking. Breathing. I threw the remote across the room. The TV snapped back to normal programming, bright and cheerful, as if it hadn't just betrayed me. I turned it off and sat in the dark, shaking, listening to the faint echo of breath that seemed to linger long after the sound was gone. The next morning, I found the chain on my front door unhooked. Not broken. Not forced. Just unhooked. I stopped inviting people over after that. I didn't want anyone else to notice how the apartment felt. How it seemed to narrow when you walked down the hallway, like the walls leaned in slightly when they sensed fear. Friends asked why I always met them outside or refused to let them come in. I lied and said I was busy or tired or sick. The truth felt impossible to explain without sounding insane. One evening, as I was washing dishes, I felt a presence behind me so strong that my body reacted before my mind could. I spun around, heart racing, expecting to see someone standing there. The kitchen was empty. But my reflection in the dark window over the sink was wrong. It was smiling. I wasn't. The smile faded a second later, snapping back into place like nothing had happened. I shut the blinds and didn't look at any reflective surface for days after that. Sleep became something dangerous. I learned to fear it. Every time my eyes closed, I felt myself slipping somewhere I couldn't control. Sometimes I would jolt awake, convinced someone had just whispered my name inches from my face. Other times I would wake up calm, peaceful, until I realized I was holding my breath, lungs burning, as if something had been covering my mouth moments before. I started finding marks on my body, faint red lines on my wrists, pressure bruises on my thighs. Once, a hand-shaped mark on my shoulder, fingers long and slightly mismatched, like they didn't belong to a human hand at all. They faded quickly, always gone by morning, leaving only soreness behind. The dreams grew clearer. I would walk through my apartment and see myself sitting on the bed, staring at the door, waiting. In the dreams, I would try to warn myself, scream, run, do anything to change what was about to happen. But the version of me in the room never reacted, never looked up, always listening to something I couldn't hear yet. One night, I dreamed the door finally opened. I woke up screaming before I could see what stepped inside. After that, the sounds changed. It stopped trying to